The orbital station hung silently in the darkness, its metallic surface reflecting the pale glow of Earth's moon. It was a place where time seemed to stretch endlessly, where the hum of machinery and the soft beeping of monitors were the only sounds that broke the silence. Emma Lewis sat in her small, cluttered workspace, staring intently at the glowing screen before her. Her fingers moved deftly across the keyboard, typing commands and analyzing streams of data that most people would find overwhelming. But Emma was different. She had always been drawn to the mysteries of the universe, and now, as an astrophysicist stationed on this remote outpost, she felt closer to those mysteries than ever before. Emma wasn't alone on the station, but it often felt that way. The other crew members went about their duties quietly, each absorbed in their own tasks. John Carter, the commander of the station, was a man of few words but immense responsibility. He trusted his team to handle their roles without constant supervision, and he rarely visited Emma's workspace unless there was something urgent to discuss. Today, however, Emma knew she had something worth sharing, something that might change everything. It started with a faint blip on her monitor, barely noticeable amidst the static and noise of deep space communication. At first, Emma thought it was just interference, a random burst of energy from some distant star or cosmic event. But as she zoomed in on the signal, she realized it wasn't random at all. The pattern was too regular, too deliberate. It repeated every few minutes, like a heartbeat pulsing through the void of space. Intrigued, Emma adjusted the frequency settings and fine-tuned the receiver until the signal became clearer. What she heard sent a shiver down her spine. "Help? USA's fleet incoming?" The voice was distorted, crackling with static, but the message was unmistakable. Someone or something was calling for help. Whoever they were, they weren't human. The language was English, but it was broken and awkward, as if translated by a machine or learned secondhand. Emma replayed the message several times, trying to make sense of it. Was it a trap? A hoax? Or was it genuine, a cry for aid from a civilization on the brink of destruction? She didn't hesitate to act. Grabbing a datapad, Emma quickly compiled a report detailing the signal's characteristics, including its origin point and possible trajectory. Then she left her workstation and made her way to the command center, where John Carter was reviewing supply manifests for the next resupply mission. His brow furrowed when he saw the look on Emma's face. "What is it?" he asked, setting aside the tablet in his hand. "I picked up a signal," Emma said, holding out the datapad. "It's coming from deep space, beyond the edge of our galaxy. Someone's asking for help." John took the datapad and scanned the information. His expression grew serious as he processed the implications. "Are you sure about this?" "As sure as I can be," Emma replied. "The signal's real, and whoever sent it knows we're here, or at least they know enough to try reaching us." John nodded slowly, his mind already racing through possibilities. If the signal was legitimate, it could mean humanity had finally made contact with intelligent alien life. But if it was a trap, responding could put the entire station and possibly Earth itself at risk. He needed input from others before making any decisions. "Get Alex Rivera and Rachel Morgan up here," John ordered. "We need to figure out what we're dealing with." Within minutes, the two additional crew members arrived in the command center. Alex Rivera was a pilot with years of experience navigating the vastness of space. His dark hair was perpetually tousled, and his easygoing demeanor masked a sharp tactical mind. Rachel Morgan, on the other hand, was a xenobiologist whose curiosity about alien life forms bordered on obsession. She carried herself with quiet confidence, her eyes always scanning for details others might miss. Once everyone was gathered, John explained the situation. Emma played the recording of the signal, watching closely as Alex and Rachel listened intently. When it ended, the room fell silent. "It's not human," Rachel said finally, breaking the tension. "But whoever sent it knows some form of human language. That's remarkable. And potentially dangerous," Alex added. "What if it's a lure? Something designed to draw us in so they can ambush us?" "That's a possibility we can't ignore," John agreed. "But we also can't ignore the fact that someone or something is in trouble. If we don't respond, we might be condemning them to death." Emma nodded. I've traced the signal's origin to a star system called Krylos 7. It's far, but not impossible to reach. We'd need a fleet, though not just one ship. John leaned back in his chair, considering their options. Sending a fleet into uncharted territory was risky, especially given how little they knew about the situation. Yet doing nothing felt equally wrong. After a long pause, he spoke. We'll send a small fleet, he decided. 3 ships should be enough to investigate without committing too many resources. Alex, you'll lead the mission. Pick your crew carefully. We'll need people who can think on their feet. Emma, keep working on decoding the signal. See if you can learn anything else about who sent it. Rachel, prepare for the possibility of encountering alien life. Whatever we find out there, we need to be ready. The decision settled over the group like a weight. They all understood the stakes. This mission could bring humanity closer to understanding its place in the universe, or it could end in disaster. Still, none of them hesitated. Each had signed up for this kind of work, knowing the risks involved. As the meeting adjourned, Emma returned to her workstation, her mind buzzing with questions. Who were these beings calling for help? Why had they chosen to reach out to humanity? And what awaited them at Krylos 7? She poured herself into the task of analyzing the signal further, determined to uncover every scrap of information she could. Meanwhile, Alex began assembling his team. He selected experienced engineers, skilled medics, and reliable navigators, ensuring the fleet would have everything it needed to succeed or survive. Rachel spent hours reviewing her notes on hypothetical alien species, imagining what kinds of creatures they might encounter. Every detail mattered. Every preparation could mean the difference between life and death. Days passed as the fleet prepared for departure. Supplies were loaded onto the ships, systems were checked and rechecked, and simulations were run to test the crew's readiness. Despite the uncertainty ahead, morale remained high. The crew believed in their mission, even if they couldn't fully grasp its significance yet. Finally, the day of departure arrived. The 3 ships, Eagle's Claw, Starlight Vanguard, and Nova Horizon, stood ready on the launch pads, their sleek hulls gleaming under the artificial lights. As the countdown began, Emma stood alongside John and watched from the observation deck. Her heart pounded with anticipation and fear. This was it, the moment they stepped into the unknown, when the ships launched. The force of their engines shook the station, a reminder of the power and fragility of human ingenuity. Through the thick glass windows, Emma watched as the fleet disappeared into the blackness of space, heading toward Krylos 7 and whatever destiny awaited them. Back in her workspace, Emma turned her attention back to the signal. There was still so much to learn, so many unanswered questions. But one thing was certain: humanity's journey into the stars had taken a dramatic turn. Whether it led to triumph or tragedy remained to be seen, and as the fleet sailed onward, the vast emptiness of space seemed to hold its breath, waiting to reveal its secrets. The fleet moved silently through the void of space, its 3 ships gliding like shadows against the endless backdrop of stars. Inside the Eagle's Claw, Alex Rivera sat at the helm, his hands steady on the controls. The journey to Krylos 7 would take days, even with the advanced engines powering their vessels. For now, there was little to do but monitor the ship's systems and wait. Alex wasn't one for patience, though. He preferred action moments when split-second decisions could mean the difference between life and death. But this mission required something different. It demanded calm, focus, and preparation for whatever lay ahead. Behind him, in the cramped quarters that served as the ship's planning room, Emma Lewis pored over data on her tablet. She had spent hours analyzing the signal they were following, searching for any clue that might help them understand who or what they were about to encounter. Her brow furrowed as she studied a series of strange patterns embedded within the transmission. They weren't random. They seemed almost mathematical, like coordinates or instructions. But without more context, it was impossible to say for sure. Rachel Morgan sat across from Emma, sketching rough diagrams of hypothetical alien species based on the limited information they had. If they're intelligent enough to send an SOS, Rachel mused aloud, they must have some kind of technology. Maybe even biology we can't imagine. Emma nodded absently, her mind still racing. Or maybe they're desperate. Desperation makes people and aliens do things they wouldn't normally consider. Alex joined them after finishing his shift at the helm. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, listening to their conversation. Whatever they are, he said, we need to be ready for anything. If they're friendly, great. If not, well, let's just hope we're faster than they are. The comment drew a faint smile from Rachel, though the tension in the room remained palpable. None of them knew what awaited them at Krylo 7, and the uncertainty weighed heavily on all of them. Still, they pressed on, each doing their part to prepare. As the days passed, the crew grew restless. The monotony of space travel wore on everyone, and small disagreements began to surface. One engineer argued with another over the best way to calibrate the shields. A medic grumbled about the lack of sleep due to irregular shifts. Even Alex found himself snapping at a junior pilot during a routine drill. It was normal for tempers to flare during long missions, but John Carter, the commander of the fleet, made sure to address these issues quickly. He called a meeting aboard the Starlight Vanguard to remind everyone of their shared purpose. We're out here because someone needs our help, John said firmly, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the assembled crew. We don't know what we'll find, but we do know this. We represent humanity. Every decision we make reflects on all of us. So let's keep our heads clear and our priorities straight. His words resonated with the crew, and the tension eased for a while at least. Morale improved slightly as people returned to their tasks with renewed determination. Emma continued decoding the signal. Alex ran simulations of potential combat scenarios, and Rachel prepared medical supplies and equipment for treating unknown injuries. The fleet was as ready as it could be. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Krylo 7 came into view. The sight was both breathtaking and unsettling. The star system was surrounded by massive debris fields, chunks of metal, rock, and ice, drifting aimlessly through space. Scans revealed traces of radiation and residual energy signatures, evidence of a catastrophic event. The planet itself was barren, its surface scarred by craters and fissures. It looked like a world that had been torn apart. Looks like someone beat us here, Alex muttered as he guided the Eagle's Claw through the wreckage, and they didn't come in peace. Emma studied the readings on her tablet, her expression grim. This isn't natural. These debris patterns suggest a massive battle. Someone fought hard to defend this place and lost. Rachel leaned forward, her eyes wide. Do you think the signal came from survivors? It's possible, Emma replied. But if there are survivors, they're probably hiding. No one stays on a battlefield unless they have no other choice. John gave the order to investigate. Further, the fleet split up, with each ship scanning a different section of the debris field. Hours passed without finding anything significant, and frustration began to creep in. Just as Alex was about to call off the search, one of the scanners picked up something unusual, a faint heat signature emanating from one of the moons orbiting. Krylo 7, there's something down there, Emma announced, excitement coloring. Her voice, it's faint, but it's definitely artificial. Could be a settlement, or a trap? John didn't hesitate. We land. But we go in armed and ready. If this is a trap, we need to be prepared to fight our way out. The crew scrambled to prepare for landing. Alex piloted the Eagle's Claw toward the moon's surface, carefully navigating the jagged terrain. As they descended, the landscape came into clearer view. The moon was covered in ruins, crumbling structures half buried in ash and dust. Strange symbols were etched into the walls of the buildings, glowing faintly in the dim light. It was clear that this had once been a thriving civilization, now reduced to rubble when the ships touched down. The team suited up and stepped onto the alien soil. The air was thin and cold, forcing them to rely on their suits' oxygen tanks. Alex led the group, his weapon drawn but lowered. Behind him, Emma carried a handheld scanner, while Rachel held a medical kit and a device designed to analyze biological samples. The others spread out, keeping watch for any signs of movement. The silence was oppressive. There were no sounds of life, no wind to stir the dust. Only the crunch of boots on the ground broke the stillness. As they explored the ruins, they found remnants of advanced technology machines that seemed to defy the laws of physics, tools crafted from materials they couldn't identify. It was clear that whoever had built this place possessed knowledge far beyond human understanding. Then, in the shadow of a collapsed tower, they discovered something unexpected. Tracks. Not human tracks, but impressions left by clawed feet. The prints were fresh, suggesting that something or someone had passed through recently. This way, Alex whispered, motioning for the team to follow. They moved cautiously, their weapons at the ready. The tracks led them to a narrow crevice in the ground, partially hidden by debris. Peering inside, they saw a faint glow emanating from below. It's some kind of underground facility, Emma sighed, adjusting her scanner. The heat signature's stronger here. Whatever's down there, it's alive. John nodded. Let's check it out, but stay sharp. We don't know what we're walking into. One by one, they climbed down into the crevice, descending into darkness. The air grew warmer as they ventured deeper, and the glow became brighter. At last, they reached a large chamber illuminated by soft, pulsating lights. The walls were lined with strange machinery, humming softly with energy. In the center of the room stood several figures, beings unlike anything they had ever seen. The creatures were tall and slender, their skin a pale, translucent blue. Their eyes were large and multifaceted, reflecting light in eerie ways. They moved slowly, their movements deliberate but weak, as if they were injured or exhausted. When they noticed the humans, they froze, staring with a mixture of fear and curiosity. For a moment, no one spoke. Then one of the beings stepped forward, raising a trembling hand. Its mouth opened, and a series of guttural sounds emerged, accompanied by fragmented English phrases. "Help, please!" Rachel instinctively stepped forward, lowering her weapon. Hurt," she said softly. "Look at them, they've been through hell." Emma approached cautiously, holding up her scanner. "Their biology is completely alien. I've never seen anything like it." Alex kept his weapon trained on the creatures, though his stance softened slightly. "Are they the ones who sent the signal?" Before anyone could answer, the largest of the beings gestured toward a console nearby. Emma moved to examine it, her fingers flying across the controls as she tried to decipher the alien interface. Slowly, images began to appear. On a screen, scenes of destruction, battles waged in space and on the surface of the moon. The creatures pointed to themselves, then to the attackers, a fleet of monstrous ships bearing insignia shaped like skulls. "The Deathworlders," Emma murmured, translating the text that accompanied the images. "They're the ones who attacked this place." Rachel knelt beside one of the wounded beings, gently examining its injuries. "These creatures, they call themselves the Krylons. They're trying to tell us something." Through a combination of gestures, broken English, and Emma's translations, the Krylons explained their plight. Their world had been invaded by the Deathworlders, a ruthless race that stripped planets of resources and exterminated all life. The Krylons had fought valiantly but were ultimately overwhelmed. Now they were the last survivors, hiding in the ruins of their once great civilization. As the story unfolded, the humans exchanged uneasy glances. They had come to offer aid, but this situation was far more complex and dangerous than they had anticipated. The Krylons begged for protection, warning that the Deathworlders would return soon to finish what they had started. John turned to his team. "What do we do now?" Alex tightened his grip on his weapon. "We can't fight an entire fleet." "Number?" The underground chamber buzzed with activity as the humans and Krylons worked side by side to prepare for the inevitable return of the Deathworlders. Emma Lewis moved quickly, her tablet glowing softly in the dim light as she deciphered more of the alien technology scattered throughout the facility. Each discovery brought new challenges but also opportunities. The Krylons' machines were far more advanced than anything humanity had created, and while their purpose was often unclear, Emma's sharp mind pieced together fragments of knowledge. That could mean the difference between survival and destruction. Alex Rivera stood nearby, overseeing the setup of defensive systems. With help from the engineers, he had rigged several of the Krylon's energy cannons to fire automatically if enemy ships approached. It wasn't a perfect solution. The Deathworlders' firepower would likely overwhelm them eventually, but it might buy them enough time to escape or mount a counterattack. Alex knew they were outmatched, but he refused to give up without a fight. His determination inspired the others. Even as fear lingered just beneath the surface, Rachel Morgan focused on the Krylons themselves, doing everything she could to treat their injuries and build trust. She had never encountered beings like them. The four, and their biology was unlike anything she'd studied. Their translucent blue skin seemed almost fragile, yet it was resilient enough to withstand harsh conditions. They communicated through a mix of gestures, sounds, and broken English, which Rachel patiently translated into clearer phrases. Over time, she learned that their species valued unity above all else, a stark contrast to humanity's often fractured nature. Despite their differences, Rachel found herself growing fond of the Krylons, especially an elder named Veron, who acted as their leader. Veron explained more about the Deathworlders, describing them as ruthless conquerors who swept through star systems like a plague. "They take what they want," Veron said haltingly, his voice strained. "They leave nothing behind." He gestured toward the ruins above them, his multifaceted eyes reflecting sorrow. "Our world, once beautiful, now dead." Rachel listened intently, her heart aching for the suffering these creatures had endured. She promised Veron and herself that they wouldn't let the same fate befall Earth, but the odds were stacked against them. Even with the combined efforts of the humans and Krylons, they were vastly outnumbered and outgunned. Commander John Carter called another meeting to assess their progress. The group gathered in the central chamber, where Emma displayed her findings on a holographic screen projected from one of the Krylon devices. "I've managed to activate some of their shielding systems," she explained, pointing to a shimmering barrier surrounding part of the facility. "It's not as strong as it used to be, but it should hold off smaller attacks." "That's good news," John said, nodding. "What about weapons? Can we use any of theirs?" Emma hesitated. "Some of their weapons are functional, but they're complicated. If we try to use them without fully understanding how they work, we risk blowing ourselves up." "Then we'll have to rely on ours," Alex interjected. "I've set traps around the debris field outside. If the Deathworlders come in force, we can at least thin their numbers before they reach us." John turned to Rachel. "How are the Krylons holding up?" "They're weak," Rachel admitted. "Their injuries are severe, and their bodies aren't healing properly. I've done what I can, but they need rest, not another battle." "We don't have much choice," John replied grimly. "If we run, the Deathworlders will hunt us down. And if we stay, we fight. Either way, we're taking a risk." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. No one argued. They all knew the truth. This mission had become more than just an exploration or rescue operation. It was now a test of survival, a chance to prove that humanity could stand alongside other species in the face of overwhelming odds. As preparations continued, tensions rose among the crew. Sleep deprivation and stress took their toll, leading to snapped tempers and heated arguments. One engineer accused another of slacking off during repairs, while a medic complained about the lack of proper supplies. John intervened whenever necessary, reminding everyone of their shared goal. "We're here because someone needs our help," he said firmly. "And because we chose to step up when no one else would. Don't lose sight of that." His words helped, but only temporarily. The strain of waiting for the Deathworlders to arrive wore on everyone. Days passed in tense silence, each moment stretching longer than the last. Scans of the surrounding space revealed nothing unusual, but the absence of activity only heightened their anxiety. It was like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing that at any moment the ground beneath your feet might crumble. Finally, the moment came. A distant alarm blared through the facility, startling everyone into action. Emma rushed to her workstation, her fingers flying across the controls. "Multiple ships detected," she announced, her voice tight with urgency. "They're heading straight for us. How long do we have?" Alex asked, already moving toward the weapons console. Minutes, Emma replied. Maybe less. John wasted no time issuing orders. Everyone to their stations. Activate the shields and prepare for impact. The humans scrambled to their positions, hearts pounding as the first wave of Deathworlder ships appeared on the horizon. The vessels were massive, their jagged hulls resembling monstrous predators poised to strike. Skull-like insignias glowed ominously on their exteriors, casting an eerie light over the battlefield. As they drew closer, smaller craft detached from the main fleet, swarming toward the moon like insects. Alex fired the energy cannons, targeting the lead ships. Explosions lit up the sky as the traps he had set earlier detonated, sending shards of debris hurtling into the enemy formation. Several ships were destroyed instantly, but many more pressed forward, undeterred by the losses. The Deathworlders clearly weren't afraid to sacrifice their forces to achieve victory inside the facility. Emma monitored the shield's integrity, her eyes darting between screens as warnings flashed red. "The barrier's weakening," she shouted. "We can't keep this up forever. Keep it together as long as you can," John ordered. "We need every second we can get." Rachel stayed close to the Krylons, ensuring they remained safe, behind reinforced walls. Viaran placed a trembling hand on her shoulder, his expression filled once again with gratitude. "You fight for us," he said softly. "Even though we are strangers." "We're not strangers anymore," Rachel replied, gripping his hand tightly. "We're allies." Above ground, the battle raged on. Alex piloted a small shuttlecraft, darting between the larger ships to draw their fire away from the base. His maneuvers were daring and precise, earning cheers from the crew watching the feeds inside the facility. But the Deathworlders adapted quickly, launching drones programmed to chase him relentlessly. Bullets grazed the shuttle's hull, forcing Alex to push the engines to their limits. Back in the command center, John coordinated the defense strategy, barking orders into his communicator. "Focus fire on the largest ships. If we can disable their command vessels, we might disrupt their coordination." Emma adjusted the shield's frequency, buying them precious seconds as the Deathworlders' weapons struggled to penetrate the barrier. Sweat dripped down her face as she fought too. Maintain control, her hands shaking from exhaustion. She knew the shield wouldn't last much longer, but every moment counted. As the enemy closed in, the humans and Krylons prepared for the worst. Some of the Krylons volunteered to join the fight, wielding salvaged weapons despite their weakened state. Rachel trained them as best she could, showing them how to aim and fire without wasting ammunition. It was a desperate move, but they had no other options. The final assault began when the Deathworlders breached the outer defenses. Massive beams of energy tore through the shield, reducing it to sparks before collapsing entirely. Without protection, the facility was exposed, vulnerable to attack. John gave the order to retreat deeper into the underground tunnels, hoping to lure the invaders into narrow passages where their numbers would work against them. As the team fled, explosions rocked the chamber behind them, sending shockwaves rippling through the corridors. Dust and smoke filled the air, making it hard to see or breathe. Still, they pushed onward, driven by sheer willpower and the knowledge that giving up meant certain death. When they reached a secure area deep within the tunnels, John called for a status update. "How bad is it?" he asked, his voice hoarse from shouting. Emma shook her head. "We lost most of the equipment upstairs. The shield generator is completely fried. But we still have the weapons," Alex added, reloading his rifle. "And we know the layout of these tunnels better than they do." John nodded, steeling himself for what lay ahead. "Then we make our stand here. We hold this position until reinforcements arrive or until the Deathworlders decide we're not worth the trouble." No one spoke. They all knew the chances of either scenario happening were slim, but they also knew they couldn't surrender not after coming so far. Together, they braced themselves for the next wave of attacks, ready to defend their newfound allies to the bitter end. Outside, the Deathworlders regrouped, their monstrous ships casting long shadows over the ruined moon. For a brief moment, the battlefield fell silent, the calm before the storm. Then, with a deafening roar, the tunnels beneath the moon's surface were dark and narrow, their walls lined with jagged rock and faintly glowing veins of alien minerals. The humans and Krylons moved quickly, setting up makeshift barricades at key points to slow the Deathworlders. Advance? Emma Lewis worked tirelessly, using damaged equipment salvaged from the ruined chamber to rig traps and alarms. Her hands trembled as she connected wires and adjusted sensors, but her focus never wavered. Every second counted, and she refused to let exhaustion or fear get in the way. Alex Rivera patrolled the tunnels, his weapon ready as he checked each intersection for signs of movement. He knew the Deathworlders would be relentless, their numbers overwhelming. But the tunnels gave them an advantage. If they could funnel the enemy into tight spaces, they might stand a chance. Alex's mind raced through strategies, planning ambush and fallback positions. He had faced dangerous situations before, but this was different. This wasn't just about survival. It was about protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Rachel. Morgan stayed close to the Krylons, ensuring they were prepared for the fight ahead. She had taught them how to use basic human weapons, though many of them struggled with the unfamiliar tools. Still, they were determined to contribute, their fragile forms masking an inner strength that Rachel admired. Viaran, the Krylon elder, stood beside her, his large eyes reflecting both fear and resolve. "We will not run," he said firmly. "This is our home." "It doesn't look like much of a home anymore," Rachel replied softly, glancing around at the crumbling tunnels. "But I understand what you mean. We'll defend it together." Commander John Carter gathered the team for one last briefing before the battle resumed. His face was grim, his voice steady as he outlined their plan. "We can't hold them off forever," he admitted, "but we don't have to. Our goal is to buy time to weaken them enough that they reconsider attacking. The U.S., if we can survive long enough, maybe they'll retreat." "And if they don't?" Alex asked, his tone sharp. "Then we make sure they pay for every step they take," John replied, meeting his gaze. "We've got surprise on our side down here. Use it." With that, the group split up, taking their positions along the tunnel network. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional beep of Emma's devices and the distant rumble of explosions above ground. Everyone waited, their nerves stretched taut like piano strings. It didn't take long for the Deathworlders to breach the entrance. Their heavy boots echoed through the tunnels as they advanced, their weapons casting harsh beams of light that cut through the darkness. The first wave stumbled into one of Emma's traps, a rigged section of the ceiling that collapsed under their weight, burying several soldiers under rubble. Cheers erupted from the humans and Krylons hiding nearby, but the victory was short-lived. More enemies poured in, their movements methodical and relentless. Alex led a counterattack, firing bursts of energy from his rifle as he darted between cover points. His aim was precise, each shot finding its mark. Beside him, Krylon fighters followed his lead, their clawed hands gripping human guns awkwardly but effectively. Together they pushed the Deathworlders back, forcing them to regroup. But reinforcements kept arriving, their sheer numbers making it impossible to hold the line indefinitely. Emma monitored the situation from her position near the rear, adjusting traps and rerouting power to keep the defenses operational. Sweat dripped down her face as she worked, her fingers flying across makeshift control panels. She cursed it under her breath when one of her devices malfunctioned, leaving a critical junction exposed. Without hesitation, she grabbed a spare toolkit and crawled toward the damaged area, her heart pounding as enemy fire whizzed past her head. Rachel stayed close to the wounded, patching up injuries as best she could. Bullets grazed arms and legs, and shrapnel tore through flesh, but she refused to give up on anyone. A young Krylon collapsed beside her, his translucent skin torn open. Rachel pressed a bandage against the wound, whispering words of encouragement even as tears blurred her vision. "You're strong," she told him. "Stay with me." Viaran fought alongside his people, his frail body belying a fierce determination. When a Deathworlder soldier lunged at him, he swung a piece of debris with surprising force, knocking the enemy off balance. Another human stepped in to finish the job, nodding in gratitude to the elder. The alliance between species was growing stronger with every passing moment. Forged in the heat of battle. Above ground, the Deathworlders' fleet continued its assault, bombarding the surface with devastating blasts. The ground shook violently, sending rocks tumbling into the tunnels below. Emma shouted warnings as sections of the ceiling collapsed, forcing everyone to move quickly to avoid being crushed. Despite the chaos, the humans and Krylons adapted, shifting their positions to maintain the upper hand. John coordinated the defense from a central location, his voice calm but urgent as he relayed orders over the communicator. Fall back to Junction 3, he commanded after spotting a group of Deathworlders flanking their position. Set up another trap. The retreat was orderly but tense, each step backward feeling like a concession. Yet the strategy worked. The Deathworlders walked straight into another ambush, triggering a cascade of explosives that sent shockwaves rippling through the tunnels. Dozens of enemy soldiers fell, their screams echoing eerily in the confined space, but the cost was high. Several humans and Krylons were injured during the skirmish, and supplies were running dangerously low. Emma's devices were nearly depleted, and Alex's ammunition was dwindling. Even John's usually unshakable confidence began to falter. They couldn't keep this up forever. As the hours dragged on, the toll of the battle became unbearable. One by one, the defenders fell, some to injuries, others to sheer exhaustion. Rachel worked tirelessly to keep everyone alive, but there were limits to what she could do. When a young engineer named Chris slumped against a wall, blood pooling beneath him, Rachel knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she tried to stem the flow. "Hold on," she whispered, though she knew it was hopeless. Chris smiled weakly, his voice barely audible. "Tell my mom I did my best." Tears streamed down Rachel's face as she nodded, clutching his hand until his breathing stopped. For a moment she sat frozen, overwhelmed by grief. Then Viarn placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, pulling her back to reality. "He fought bravely," the elder said softly, "as we all must." Rachel wiped her eyes and stood, her resolve hardened. There would be time to mourn later if they survived. For now, she had a job to do. The turning point came when Emma discovered something unexpected while inspecting a damaged console. Hidden within the Krylon's technology was a fail-safe, a self-destruct mechanism capable of collapsing the entire underground facility. It was a desperate measure, but it might be their only chance to stop the Deathworlders once and for all. She brought the discovery to John immediately. "If we trigger this, it'll destroy everything, including us," she explained, her voice shaking. "But it'll also take out most of the Deathworlders. Maybe even their fleet." John stared at her, weighing the options. Sacrificing themselves was unthinkable, but so was letting the Deathworlders win. After a long pause, he made his decision. "Prepare it," he said quietly. "But we'll need a way to evacuate as many people as possible first." Emma nodded and returned to her workstation, her hands steady despite the enormity of the task. Meanwhile, Alex and Rachel spread the word among the survivors, urging them to gather at a designated escape route. Time was running out, and every second mattered. When the Deathworlders launched their final push, the humans and Krylons fought with everything they had left. Bullets flew, explosions shook the ground, and cries of pain filled the air. But amidst the chaos, there was a sense of purpose, a shared understanding that this was their last stand. As the enemy closed in on the central chamber, John activated the failsafe. Alarms blared throughout the facility, warning of imminent destruction. "Go!" he shouted to the others. "Get out of here!" Emma hesitated, unwilling to leave him behind. "You can still make it?" she pleaded. "No," John replied firmly. "Someone has to stay and trigger the sequence manually. Now go." Reluctantly, Emma joined the retreat, her heart breaking as she ran toward the escape route. Behind her, John stood alone in the chamber, his finger hovering over the activation button. As the Deathworlders breached the door, he pressed it without hesitation, sealing his fate in theirs. The explosion was catastrophic, sending shockwaves rippling through the tunnels and collapsing the facility entirely. Above ground, the Deathworlders' fleet reeled from the blast, their ships damaged beyond repair. For the first time, they hesitated, unsure whether continuing the attack was worth the cost. In the aftermath, the surviving humans and Krylons emerged from the escape route, battered but alive. They watched as smoke rose from the ruins, mourning those they had lost. But amid the sorrow there was hope. They had stood together against impossible odds, and won. As they prepared to leave the moon and return to Earth, Rachel looked at Viren, who stood silently beside her. "Where will you go now?" she asked gently. Vrun's multifaceted eyes gleamed with gratitude. "With you," he replied. "To your world, to rebuild." Rachel smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Humanity had taken its first? The survivors gathered at the edge of the moon's surface, their faces streaked with dirt and exhaustion. The air was thick with smoke and ash, remnants of the catastrophic explosion that had saved them and cost them dearly. Emma Lewis stood among the group, her hands trembling as she clutched a small device containing the last of the data they had salvaged from the underground facility. She looked back at the ruins, her mind replaying John Carter's final moments. He had sacrificed himself to ensure their survival, and the weight of his decision pressed heavily on all of them. Alex Rivera helped the injured onto one of the remaining ships, his movements mechanical but efficient. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by a quiet determination to see this mission through. Every step he took reminded him of the friends they had lost, friends who had trusted him to lead them safely home. He glanced at the horizon, where the battered remnants of the Deathworlders' fleet lingered uncertainly. They hadn't followed the survivors, perhaps realizing that pursuing them further would only result in more losses. For now, the humans and Krylons were safe, but Alex knew this victory was fragile. Rachel Morgan knelt beside Viren, tending to a wound on his arm. The Krylon elder winced but remained still, his large eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved us," he said softly, his broken English carrying a depth of emotion. "We owe you everything." Rachel shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, Viren, we did it together. Without your people, we wouldn't have made it this far." Her words were true, but they couldn't erase the pain of losing so many lives. She thought of Chris, the young engineer who had died smiling, and others whose faces she would never forget. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away. There would be time to grieve later. For now, they needed to focus on getting home. The journey back to Earth was somber. The three ships, Eagle's Claw, Starlight Vanguard, and Nova Horizon, flew in formation, their hulls scarred from battle. Inside, the mood was heavy with loss and reflection. Conversations were sparse, limited to necessary exchanges about navigation and repairs. Emma spent most of her time alone, poring over the data she had saved. She hoped it contained answers, clues about the Deathworlders' origins, weaknesses, or motives. If humanity was going to survive future encounters, they needed every advantage. They could get. Alex piloted the Eagle's Claw, his thoughts drifting between memories of the battle and concerns about what lay ahead. Earth's governments would demand explanations for the mission's outcome, and not everyone would understand the sacrifices that had been made. Some might even question whether the risks had been worth it. But Alex didn't care about politics. All that mattered to him was ensuring the safety of his crew and honoring the memory of those who had fallen. As they approached Earth's orbit, Rachel sat with Varn and a few other Krylons, explaining what to expect when they landed. "Humans can be unpredictable," she admitted. "Some will welcome you. Others might fear you. But I promise I'll do everything I can to help you adjust." Viren nodded slowly, his expression calm despite the uncertainty. "Your world is strange to us, but we are grateful to have a chance to live again." When the ships touched down at a secure military base, the survivors disembarked into the bright sunlight. Cameras flashed and officials rushed forward, bombarding them with questions. Reporters shouted from behind barriers, eager for details about the alien species accompanying them. For a moment, chaos reigned as the humans tried to shield the Krylons from the overwhelming attention. Commander Lisa Hayes, a high-ranking officer sent to oversee the operation, stepped forward to restore order. Her sharp gaze swept over the group, lingering briefly on the Krylons before addressing Emma, Alex, and Rachel. "Report to debriefing immediately," she ordered, "and bring the aliens with you. We need to understand exactly what happened out there." The debriefing lasted hours. Emma presented the data she had recovered, explaining the Krylons' plight and the threat posed by the Deathworlders. Alex recounted the battles, his voice steady as he described the sacrifices made to protect both species. Rachel spoke passionately about the Krylons' resilience and their potential to coexist peacefully with humanity. By the end of the session, Commander Hayes seemed satisfied but also deeply troubled. "This changes everything," Hayes said finally, leaning back in. "Her chair to be continued,"